Hello, everybody, and welcome to another very exciting episode of Newsflash on the day after what was one of those days that's kind of been going on back and forth the past 2 years, or past 4 years, really, where you just see something and you're like, this can't be right. Well, a bunch of Trump supporters breaking through the Capitol and kind of running roughshod over the Capitol for several hours yesterday. In a really violent and riotous fashion, completely overwhelming the Capitol Police, and at some points seemed to be kind of not really even trying, or not even that they could try to stop these people coming in, all in an attempt to stop the counting of the electoral votes that would certify Joe Biden as the next 46th president. And that is, of course, being led by a large cohort within the Republican Party as in terms of elected officials, the media, and, of course, President Trump himself. What I want to do today is break down with our wonderful guest, so glad to have him today, David Langan, about what really is driving the split, what can be done about the future, and what can we expect to see, and really, why is stuff like this happening? What in the Republican Party is causing this? And, of course, I'm sure we'll also talk about the dysfunction of the Democrats, too, and how they are, of course, players in this situation. Because when can we not? Welcome to today's show, and welcome on in. This is, I believe, episode 468 of Newsflash. So, Dave Lang, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Spencer. It's always a pleasure.
First of all, the best way to start, I think, is just start from the top. What was your reaction to the events of yesterday?
I'd love to say that I was shocked, but I can't say that. It's, like any observer, with even a few screws tightened, this is insane. But I also, I'm also reminded of something I heard a long time ago. And it was about when Fidel Castro was beginning to take hold of Cuba. And someone commented that, these are people, how do you control this wave, this incredible force of communism in Cuba? And I think a journalist ultimately said, never underestimate a man with a cause. And that's how it seems. Like there's, in the deep fringes of the Republican Party, just as there is in any organization, you're going to find extremists. Unfortunately, our commander-in-chief, he invited the extremists, basically gave them carte blanche to show up and wreak some havoc. I do believe they underestimated it because they clearly did not have enough police presence. They clearly did not have enough barricades. They clearly underestimated the seriousness with which some of these people showed up. So it's a sad day.
I definitely think so. And I think they're definitely like the act of this, I think in the first place, is like in terms of the fringes of the Republican Party. I mean, it is, I do kind of question that sense, because it really does seem that with what the opinion polls believing that 85% of the Republican base or Republican voters believe that this election was stolen and the government is illegitimate. I'm not saying that 85% of the Republican Party are the type of people who are going to come in and storm the Capitol, but it does seem like there is a real disconnect and real lack of faith, almost like in large majorities of the Republican Party, in just the basic function of, like, our government. We elect a president, and the president gets to serve for a 4-year term. Like, that seems to be almost up in the air at this point, based on the way large portions of the Republican Party are responding to this.
Yeah. No, I believe it is the same in both parties. I think that the people who are more centrist inside both parties have not really understood the game that the extremist ends of the party is playing. We thought we were all playing by one man, one vote, peaceful transfer of power, and apparently that is not what enough people think.
Yeah. I mean, I think like it's very interesting, I think for me, is to see some of the people who have like been really sowing doubts as to legitimacy of this election, really time and time again, turn around and like, especially on people like Fox News, turn around and be like, how could this possibly happen? Like this really sees the like this is the divide in our country is really scary, guys. Like this is, I think like this has
the divide is scary. It is scary.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you have to, like, the reason why people storm the Capitol, like, they made it very clear why they were doing it. It's because they thought the election was stolen. And who has spent the past 2 months telling them the election was stolen?
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
Everybody in the Republican Party.
No, you can't say everybody, and that's my biggest.
Well, technically not everybody, but like, there's been some people, but
that's the biggest problem in all of this, is that a handful of people are somehow now responsible for eliminating any reasonable policy gain that the libertarians, right-leaning libertarian or conservative groups have made. And some of these things are legitimate. When we talk about taxes, how do we deal with enemies, foreign enemies? How do you deal with the Chinese economy? Like these are all up for debate in a legitimate in legitimate political discourse. But this clearly is going to be eclipsed by what occurred.
Yeah, and I mean, I really think
that is annoying. As someone who never, as a person who supported policies and not a person, that's disappointing to me.
Yeah, I mean, I really think it is quite remarkable that there are some people, like, there are people who hold the Republican Party, like, name badge, like, they have the R's next to their name, like, the people like Mitch McConnell and, like, Ben Sass and those people who came out, and Mitt Romney, for example, who came out, like, pretty strongly against the craziness of yesterday. But there are, and no one really came and said, the riots are good, but there definitely are like a huge, like there definitely is a big group of like the Republican, pretty much all the people that the Republican base listens to and cares about. I think they're the ones that matter, and they're the ones who are like most closely aligned to Trump, first of all, and really kind of like in touch with this election thing. And to go with what you were saying before, it really is such a dumb political posture to take in terms of where the Republicans are, like in terms of they have Joe Biden coming up and they have a Democratic Party who's going to preside over and really probably do next to nothing about just really hard economic times for a lot of people. And they're doing this. Like,
well, extremists always shoot the movement in the foot, right? So it happens when there were, DC saw riots over the summer. So did Los Angeles, Portland, in Minnesota, in New York. We all saw riots all over the country, right? And everyone spent, left-leaning journalists did their very best to make sure that people understood that there's a separation between rioting and a cause. And I'm hoping that somehow comes out of this as well, that there is rioting and then there's a cause. And I don't mean the cause of overturning an election. That was never a cause. That was ridiculous.
Yeah.
The cause really should have been the whole time, let's examine election procedures in states where we're having trouble counting votes. Why did it take a month to count votes? In Florida, they count them in a day. And they learned their lesson well from 2000. I think other people have to learn that lesson too. This ridiculously horrible unrest didn't happen in a vacuum. There is an underlying cause, and the same with with any cause on the left. There are people who feel hopeless, helpless, disenfranchised, disaffected. Like, why is that? Why is lockdowns don't help, right? Idle hands to the devil's playground, so to speak.
Yeah.
But there clearly is a problem in American politics that we've come to violence everywhere to solve our problem.
Yeah, I really do. It is in terms of like the causes that we've seen, and it is definitely very interesting because we saw like the biggest, the objectors of the Republican side, like people like Josh Hawley, and I remember they were saying like, oh, the mail-in votes were like they added in the mail-in votes like late in the game. I think that was pretty much what he was saying. And I don't quite know if that's what you're referring to, but I think like it's very, very telling because there's no real evidence that's been that any of those mail-in votes were like fraudulently cast. Like there were two people voting. Like there's actually any two people who ended up voting twice or whatever. It's just if it did happen, it seems to be at a very marginal level. But I think the end result of this, which is kind of crazy,
when you call it marginal, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. The whole campaign was marginally won. I think if you really dig through all the votes, about 50,000 votes separated the winner from the loser.
Yeah, in terms of
the
state margins, yeah.
And so that's what we're really talking about. And I can't disagree with the proposition that the pandemic was a pretty good foil for rejiggering election boards in pursuit of a win for your team. Why not? It's not illegal. Give it a shot.
Yeah, what I really don't get
is fair game, right?
Yeah, and you have like the whole myth about like what we found out. It was a myth. It's like the people like Josh Hawley are like, oh, we can't have increased turnout that the mail-in voting was going to bring. Well, we saw massively increased turnout, and it turned out to be completely obviously the Republicans ended up losing, but the turnout wasn't the issue there. Like it clearly was not the issue. So it seems like kind of almost counterproductive that like you got people like them like really trying to attack the mail-in votes when it's clear that what the Democrats have been selling is, oh, demographics is destiny and turning out people is the way we win. Turning out enough people is the way we win. Like that really 2020 like kind of shattered that myth because we had all this turnout and it went super high for Republicans as well because it was easier to vote.
Yeah, I mean, of course, turnout cuts both ways, right? It's the bottom line is you got to turn out your voters. You got to register people. You got to get them. You got to get them motivated. I also do believe, call me a cynic, whatever, that if this was reversed, you'd have Democrats screaming about ballot harvesting in certain places and unofficial ballot drop boxes, and that the post office was involved. I mean, nobody's an angel here.
Yeah, I definitely we saw what they would. I think we did.
About power.
They would be, I think, probably a lot worse, a lot like, I don't know, the tack they would take would not be as good because we saw kind of like what that would happen is like the shock of Trump winning the first time around, obviously, in 2016. Like they had the whole Russia thing, and that was almost their kind of like ballot harvesting, like kind of ridiculous side